So why is it we don't see more slot A systems out there in the retro PC community? Recently I did a video on the Slot 1 platform from Intel. It was very well received. It's a very popular platform and I got quite a few comments about what about Slot A? For me personally, when the Slot A system launched, I took a break from computing for around 4 years. I moved to England and yeah, I was studying very hard, drinking a lot and following football. In the end, the poor weather really got to me and yeah, I moved to Australia, much more sunshine. But every time the World Cup is on and England is playing, I get up at 2 or 4 o'clock in the morning and I cheer them on. So let's do a little bit of research. I found a review from AnandTech and we can see here the Athlon 700 delivers excellent performance, easily beating out the Pentium 3 with the 440BX chipset. And here we have a result for OpenGL. It is Quake 3 and look at that, the Athlon 700 does really well. In the conclusion, there are quite a few interesting nuggets of information. They are writing here that the Athlon is the faster chip on a clock for clock basis, and as an overall recommendation they're choosing the Athlon 600 as being outstanding value. So the performance of the actual Athlon CPU is pretty good. In the conclusion of the AnandTech review, they are hinting at some of the issues to do with the quality and availability of motherboards. AnandTech followed up with another article, The Battle for Slot A Motherboards, where they're going into a little bit of detail what's going on. And it had nothing to do with the manufacturers not wanting to make good motherboards. The issue was Intel. They pressured manufacturers by withholding the quantity of the 440BX chipsets, for example, and putting pressure on companies not to be too proactive in promoting and making Slot A mainboards. And Asus is mentioned here with one of the motherboards, the K7M. They sold the motherboard in a generic OEM box, not retail, without any marketing. So the industry was really suffering from Intel here being very anti-competitive. And this is a real shame because the system that I put together, I was really impressed. Let's start talking about the motherboard. So this is from BioStar. It's the model number M7MKA version 1.0. And believe it or not, this has a chipset from AMD. So no blue screen and other latency issues, unlike we see with the VIA chipset. And look at this motherboard. It's really neat and clean. We have HEP. For some reason, it's only HEP version 1. I put some information on the screen for you to check out. We've got 5 PCI slots, 2 ISA slots. So this is a perfect machine to go hybrid, Windows 98 and DOS. 3 SD-RAM slots. The layout is fairly neat. Just the ATX power connector is in a little bit in an unfortunate spot. And in terms of ports, we have even USB, PS2, 2.0 and parallel. So I was really excited to get started, and the next point is to gather some resources. I had a look on the official BioStar website, but they're not hosting the files for these older mainboards anymore. However, thanks to the Wayback Machine, we're going back in time. Here we are in August of the year 2000 and I got all the resources. For example, the motherboard manual as well as the latest BIOS. We have version 1223B from January of 2000, which improves an issue with the IDE storage controller. When I installed Windows 98, I was surprised. Here we are in Device Manager and all the devices had a driver installed out of the box. I've never seen anything like that. Now, of course, we are using the latest chipset drivers, again, from the Wayback Machine. We can scroll down here, AMD chipset, the HEP mini port driver version 4.8, and that is really the only motherboard driver I had to install. I activated DMA mode in Device Manager, and another surprise, we have a UDMA 66 controller integrated in the chipset, and here we have some benchmark results. ATTO disk benchmark with our SSD, and look at that. excellent performance in both reading and writing. The SSD we're using is from SanDisk. It's a U100 with 32 gigabytes, and we're using the StarTech SATA to ID adapter. And we are using the GOTEK USB floppy emulator to boot from the Windows 98 boot floppy disk. With my projects, I also want to check carefully the CPU specifications. There can also be some surprises, and this is something I didn't know in advance. If we look at the Wikipedia page, it's a list of all the Athlon processors. We can see there are actually two types of CPUs. The older ones have a 250 nanometer process, whereas the newer ones are built on a smaller 180 nanometer process. And that means, yeah, less power consumption, less power draw. I was lucky. I've got this model here, the Athlon 700, built on the 180 nanometer process. In terms of power consumption, it's listed as having 39 watt TDP. I used the power meter at the wall. The entire system consumed around 60 watts, and that is not too bad. A system like this draws most of the power from the 5-volt rail. That's important. You need to check your power supply. Modern power supplies have issues with old systems that draw a lot of power from the 5-volt rail. 60 watts, that's a piece of cake. The power supply I'm using, it's an Asus 750 watts. It has 25 amps on the 5-volt rail. If you multiply those two numbers, it gives you a capacity of 125 watts. So 60 watts for the total system, not a problem at all. Still, my recommendation is if you are putting together a slot A system, use a CPU with the smaller 180 nanometer process. I did a little bit of cleaning with the processor. There was a blue thermal pad stuck between the processor cartridge and the cooler. I used a plastic scraper to scrape it off, and then a little bit of orange power to clean it up, and then reapplying some MX4 thermal paste. Unfortunately, I didn't have a replacement fan. The stock fan still did an okay job. And yeah, shout out to Noctua. I really hope they are doing a 50mm fan in the future for us retro PC enthusiasts. For the graphics, we're using a GeForce FX 5200. This one has a 128-bit bus. The GPU runs at 250 MHz and the memory is clocked at 200 MHz, giving 400 mega transfers. This one also needed a little bit of fill TLC, so again I'm using the orange power to get rid of the final thermal paste residue, and then some MX4 and also a new fan to keep this card nice and cool. The graphics driver I like to use with a GeForce FX is version 56.64. Apart from that, we also have 256 megabytes of RAM. That's plenty for Windows 98, and we need a sound card. It is of course the Sound Blaster Live, including the drivers from Joseph. Let's have a look at some benchmarks. In 3D Mark 99 Max we're getting 4,806, and in 3D Mark 2000 4,568. And here we have some results for GL Quake. We can see that the processor is doing a good job. Here we are bottlenecked by the video card as we increase the resolution. This is quite different in Expendable. Here the performance is the same across the different resolutions. The processor unfortunately is a little bit too weak for this game. But then I remembered the benchmark result of Expendable that Anantech shared on their website, and the results are much higher. So what's going on? Now, I still have to do a little bit of testing, and those of you who have been following the channel for a little bit longer, you know what's going on. For those of you who joined recently, well, if you're using a more modern video card like a GeForce FX and you put it into an older system, you will not get the optimal performance. You are better off using an older video card with older drivers. They have less of a CPU overhead. I might do a follow-up video with some exact benchmark results for you to compare. So just keep that in mind. DOS performance was also nice. In the PC player benchmark, 167.8 FPS, Doom 89 FPS, and Quake 125.8 FPS. So for DOS gaming, plenty of performance. I used the set mul utility to disable the CPU cache, and we're getting a score of 13.5. This is awesome. This is perfect 386 speed. This means you can slow down this platform and play many of those speed-sensitive DOS games. And this was a great opportunity to play some more Tachyon the Fringe. I got some good feedback on the slot 1 video. I had some issues docking to the station, and yeah, it's really simple. You have to press enter, so I appreciate all the comments. Pressing enter also lets you pick up cargo that drifts around in space. And yeah, I was able to continue. In this video, this was the only game I wanted to play. What I'm finding is if I play 2 or 3 games, then yeah, my mind gets a little bit confused. I'm not enjoying it too much. It becomes like a chore. So I want to continue playing this game a little bit more. I invested another 2 hours or so, making solid progress. So what's happening is it has different regions, parts in space, and you can do all the missions in that region and then move on to another one, and the story continues. And yeah, the missions have a nice blend of defending, attacking. Sometimes you have to identify ships and find a specific ship with a certain signature. So the variety of the missions, yeah, it's really beautiful. You can purchase new ships. I've got a ship that's got a nice blend of speed as well as hull integrity and protection. I have the option to buy something that's a lot faster, but then the hull is quite weak and you're more vulnerable. And there's another ship that's the opposite. It's quite slow, but it's very powerful and very sturdy, a lot of protection. So at the moment I'm sticking with the ship I have, and you also can upgrade the lasers to some more powerful weapons, but then the reload time is a lot slower. So it's a bit of a balance. I think you are best off equipping a bit of both. A strong weapon is your secondary and a medium weapon is your primary, and then you can toggle both with the controls. And talking about the controls, I continue using the Thrustmaster T16000. Windows 98 has excellent support for USB joysticks. Modern ones, just plug it in. The built-in drivers take care, and it's a beautiful experience playing such a game with the joystick. Again, I'm finding the game not too difficult, but you really need to know what you're doing and you need to read the mission explanations quite carefully. Sometimes, yeah, you miss a certain detail or there's a certain way to play a mission. I give you an example. Some of the larger ships, they have power systems and you can take them out before the mission starts without any consequences, which is a little bit, yeah, it doesn't quite make sense. I mean, you're attacking a ship and taking out their energy systems and yeah, no retaliation, and then later you become enemies. So little things like that make the missions a lot easier. In terms of performance, the game definitely struggled a little bit on this machine, partly because of the video card, because we're using quite a modern video card with quite new drivers that have a higher CPU overhead. And at some part in the game, I'm going into the settings and I'm turning off some of the graphical details, and then the game runs a little bit better. I also tested playing on the CRT monitor. In a recent video, I compared how the CRT monitor looks in DOS games and then compared it with what it looks like on an LCD monitor, and I couldn't unsee it. The CRT monitor just looks so much nicer. With Windows 98, my conclusion is a little bit different. I wasn't as impressed from the look that I saw on the CRT. Here, if you have an LCD monitor and you have native scaling, like a native resolution, either by playing at the native resolution of your monitor, like 1280 by 1024, or you have a video card that can do centered GPU scaling. Some of the NVIDIA cards can do that. The image looks absolutely wonderful. So I'm actually quite happy that unlike DOS, I don't feel the need to have to play with a CRT monitor under Windows 98. So yeah, I'm happy I tested this aspect. So all in all, this is a fantastic game, and in the comments from the last videos, you guys agree. This is the version from GOG. Just install it on the modern computer and then copy the game folder onto your retro gaming PC and you're done. You don't need any CD keys activation, no launcher. It just works DRM free, which is exactly how it should be. We want to focus on playing games, building our PCs, and yeah, it's not an issue about the money. We can afford buying games, but we don't want to be locked behind DRM and having, finding patches and cracks to get our old games going. It's quite annoying, but yeah, this is the reality of the situation. And as always, there are ways around things, and the community always finds a way to get us to play our games. So guys, we had a look at the benchmark results, and I shared some of the interesting aspects of the installation. For example, that all the devices are picked up in Device Manager. The chipset is from AMD, and in terms of stability, I had absolutely no issues. So quite the contrast to some of the motherboards with the VIA chipset. So all in all, well, the performance checks out. It compares favorable with a Pentium 3 at the same clock speed, clock for clock. It's set to be a little bit faster. I don't think you will notice it. So in terms of performance, it's absolutely fine. We get HEP PCI ISA. We can slow it down to a 386. What's not to like? This is actually a really nice system, and I'm happy I checked it out. So the question is, why don't more people in the retro PC community use the Slot A? And I think it's availability of parts. So the Slot 1 platform was really popular. There are a lot of boards out there, a lot of CPUs. You can use adapters to use socket 370 on Slot 1 and so on. And there are also a lot of resources out there. With Slot A, they're a little bit, they're harder to find, that's for sure. I think they made far less motherboards, and Anatech hinted at some quality and production issues. There are also many motherboards that don't have a chipset from AMD. They use, of course, a chipset from VIA. So here, your experiences might be totally different. I can only evaluate what I have here in front of me. And in terms of all the aspects, performance, compatibility, the power consumption, compatibility with modern power supplies, I was really impressed. It worked flawlessly for me, and I had a really good experience. So this is definitely something I can recommend, but I can't speak for other systems out there. So if you see a system with a good price, go for it. It gets the thumbs up, especially if you're an AMD fan. This is a really nice platform. So yeah, but that's just my opinion. What are your thoughts on the Slot A platform? In terms of launch date, let's have a look. It was around, 1999. What were you up to? I was in England, studying hard, drinking a lot, and following football. So what were you up to? I had a period of around 4 years where I just checked out from computers and just, focused on studying and other aspects of life. But then I came back, and now I'm still enjoying this hobby of retro PC gaming, which is absolutely awesome. And I want to hear from you. What is your story? What is your take on Slot A? And that's it for this one. Also, if you enjoyed the video, consider supporting me on the Patreon platform. We have a nice Discord community, and I share a lot of behind the scenes footage, extended gameplay, and other content that doesn't make it into a video on YouTube. So thank you so much for the support, and that's it for this one. I shall see you soon. I shall see you very soon. Thank you.